adults, and then we touched on this and realized that this is a big topic, a big uh, topic of conversation out there for lots of folks, and it's a big issue. Like everything we try to do here on the Compass is to be helpful, not to add to the noise out there on the internet, but just to be helpful to people and families that are actually grappling with questions about various transitions and life issues. So anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We have JC here today. Let me introduce JC. She's a young adult who's in that transitional age, and is works here with us. She's a nursing student, and she also recently got married. How long have you guys been married now?
Got married in February 24th. So
yeah, so
3 months.
Yeah, 3 months into that transition. So yeah, looking forward to hearing what JC's insights are too.
Well, I think let's start with dating and just the concept of dating and what's your view? There's some people who date for fun, people who date for marriage.
Yeah.
From a psychiatric perspective, what's the healthiest viewpoint of finding this companion?
Yeah. We may have even touched on that because I think that might have been some of what sparked our interest in maybe following up on this. Because one of the things that it seems like I spend, I have several conversations a week along these lines, just helping young adults as they sort out the kind of crazy dichotomy of thoughts about dating in our current culture. It's just crazy. Like the one crazy extreme that really in some ways, like everybody kind of knows that it's crazy is the crazy extreme of dating that's just about, the one night stands, the hookups, the Tinder and whatever. I don't know, whatever. I don't keep up with those apps, but I hear people talk about some that seem to be, no, I don't know anything about any of them. So, but seem to be skewed towards the hookup kind of experience of dating. And that's a thing. That's a sort of a way of thinking about dating. But I also happen to think that it's more subtle, but equally as like just weird and unhealthy and off the mark is this other extreme of, like we went on 2 dates and now we're Facebook official or whatever makes things official these days, of like, we're in this exclusive committed relationship. And I'm like, well, what? That's just as crazy as the other in some ways.
Yeah.
And I think the issue in terms of how I approach that here is not judging the individual, but sympathizing and empathizing with how crazy it is to be in the dating world these days when these are the extremes. It's just like, well, what am I supposed to do? What is this supposed to be like?
The average age for a female is 28 when they get married in the US, 30 for a man right now. Do you think that's healthy? Should they be getting married earlier? Should they be getting married later?
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion, to be honest, about that. I have a strong opinion about lots of things, but that's one I don't have a strong opinion about. Because I think it really, I look at it going back to those two extremes that I talked about. Like if you're figuring out ways to avoid those two extremes and you're pursuing dating with a degree of seriousness to like finding a meaningful committed relationship that brings more stability, consistency, all those qualities, various pollsters and sociology types that keep track of all that stuff for decades, have, the data's out there that despite the fact that our sort of moral concepts around marriage have changed, yet you ask people and they still value a committed long-term relationship and feel like it adds value to their life. It adds, surveys indicate that they express more long-term satisfaction, long-term happiness, all of those things. And so I think if you're taking that seriously, I often say, and I tell folks all the time, I say, look, I know it's terribly unromantic, and I'm sort of in some ways a hopeless romantic, but you have to look at dating like a job interview. And so if you're serious about the job interview, you understand what you're looking for, and you're serious about the job interview, then once you've found somebody that gets the job, whether you're 19 or 30, sign them up. Get it done. Get them signed up. Don't linger. I mean, move forward, make the commitment, make the leap.
And this will be interesting feedback from JC as well. But once they've been signed up, they've made that commitment, marriage has begun, inevitably the communication shifts and changes. The communication with a life partner, your spouse, has to be different than somebody that you're just dating. And so how does that communication need to change as they move from that dating age to that married age? And obviously there's some common challenges there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's it changed for you, JC? Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of goes more from the fun, let's go hang out with some friends, or let's go out to dinner and this and that, to more of like, which that still is important, but still to the more, oh, did you pay this bill? Or, we're working on a house right now, and it's spending every night and all the weekend working on that. It's more of the,
oh, by the way, do you know how to hang sheetrock?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It shifts from the more just the fun things to the more things that you're going to run into no matter if you want to or not kind of situations. So
I'm certified in this thing called Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. And it's a premarital counseling program that I've used in ministry quite a bit. And one whole section, it's like one whole gathering that you have with this couple before they get married, is dealing with expectation versus reality. And so the way it works is that each couple takes a test independently, and then you come together and you go over the results week by week over different sections. And one of those sections is expectations versus reality. And that's always the toughest meeting to have, because where the man and woman are at are often so far apart, and then having them to have to learn how to grip and deal with the compromise that's going to have to take place. It's fun and interesting and challenging, and sometimes it's full of tears and sometimes full of laughter.
Yeah, definitely. And I think learning that, and again, JC, jump in. I mean, you and Will are right in the middle of those beginning processes, and I'm well into a marriage, but Paul and I still, we still have to learn how to sort through the fun things, the romantic things, and the the toilet overflowed, who's going to go fix it? I mean, how are we going to get this done, or whatever, conflict and those sort of things. And one of the things with that, and I don't know where you're at with that, JC, but I know 3, 6 months, a year, 2 years into a marriage, one of the things I think most couples have to come to grips with, it's the thing where I'm coming from with that, Tyler, is it's the thing that's right underneath the expectations. And the thing that's right underneath the expectations is when you begin to realize, oh, wait a minute, this person speaks a completely different language than I do. Like, I speak the language of my family of origin, but he's speaking the language of his family of origin. And when we say things, we don't always mean the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure that out. Like, oh, well, wait a minute. We always did it this way.
Right.
And when you say this, so I don't know if you have experiences like that already.
Yeah, there's like, even just with like, I think one difficult thing is like with holidays and things, like doing different things on those and trying to sort out, oh, well, we're going to go here. We're going to go here. Like, Father's Day, like, well, it's both of our dad's Father's Day. Like, that kind of thing is a big, I think holidays is a thing that we're sorting through right now, trying to figure out
how
I don't want to say
this.
a schedule, but kind of like a schedule for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Classic. And that's, with Father's Day coming up. I mean, that's a great example of like a very simple thing. And exactly what you said, Tyler, it's, well, what are the expectations that I have going in? How do I communicate that so that we are actually communicating and not missing each other? We're communicating, we're connecting. And then even to communicate doesn't mean that you're resolving conflict yet. You're just like, oh, we do have a conflict. Like my expectation is that we're going over to Dad's because we always go to Dad's and barbecue.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we do. You're right. We always go to Dad's and barbecue. So, okay. We have a conflict. How do we resolve that?
I think on the last episode too, we were just talking about the issue in our culture of prolonged adolescence and how there are a lot of people who are 18 that are, still living with parents, and then 25 and still living with parents and sort of under that threshold. And I think that could be part of the reason why people are getting married later. Obviously, in rural areas, people are still getting married young, and there seems to be a streak of independence in them that's a little bit different than in other cultural centers. But at the same time, something that I think about, and I don't know if you have had patients where you've had to talk through these kinds of things either, but when I think about it, the way that family and social support changes and adapts in those early stages of marriage has to be important, right? Because if you're too linked to your family, you're not able to start something on your own, but then you don't want to be disconnected either.
Huge. I'm curious, JC, if you have thoughts about that or comment, because I have definitely some thoughts about that and can share, stories and clinical information about it. But you're in that process of like that transition of like family and family support and but then figuring out how to do it on your own.
Right. Yeah, one of my big things is I told Will, like, I don't want to live extremely close to my parents or extremely close to his. Like, and right now we're about halfway in between them both, which is nice, but that was my thing. Like, I don't want to be right in their backyard of one or the other, because I told him, like, this is me and him now, and not, oh, well, let's just run to mom and dad's every night kind of thing. And we still probably go once or twice a week and have dinner or visit, but that was a big thing of mine. And I've been moved out since I graduated high school, and he just moved out when we got married. So that's been a big difference, because I'm used to being out, but there's still some things that he isn't used to. And I mean, both of our families, the support is huge. Like, my mom will be like, hey, I got some groceries and bring some over. Last week, his mom did just little like stuff like that. But my main thing was being able to separate that still, because we had gotten married. So that's I thought about that.
Yeah, I think that's really healthy. And I think, just paying attention, exactly what you're saying, JC, just paying attention to the physical space. Like, we really do need to create some physical, emotional, and financial distance so that we can learn how to
Mm-hmm.
be, our own family unit, our own, couple, our own, we're doing this together. And so creating the space for that, I think is really, really helpful. I know it's not realistic for a lot of folks, and I'm not saying that it's absolutely necessary, but I do often encourage young couples to at least consider a period of time of moving away, like completely away, a different city, really get some distance.
We've had that discussion,
Mm-hmm.
and which I've got to get through school first, but that's
Right.
still, if that can work out, that is on our radar to
Mm-hmm.
just for a little bit to be
Mhm.
able to.
Yeah. Because, I think for couples, it is probably different. Not probably. I mean, I know it is different, like you said, Tyler, in different cultural centers and stuff. But in more rural areas, and to some extent, it is true even in cities, I think, because we tend to gravitate to the social spheres that we grew up in. And so I think for 20 somethings, no matter what age specifically it is that they get married, sometimes it's very hard. I mean, I'll use myself and my kids as an example. It's very hard for Garrett to be Garrett Robinson and not to be, oh, well, yeah, you're Brad's son, or oh, yeah, you're Delane and Marjorie's grandson. Well, the legacy of that, I hope, has been a good thing for Garrett, but it has also been incredibly important for he and Sarah to be the last several years in Columbia, Missouri, where he's just Garrett. I mean, they have to make a name for themselves. They have to make their own relationships. They have to sort of band together, the two of them, to be who they are. Yeah.
You mentioned before about C.S. Lewis's Four Loves.
Yeah.
And he differentiates between four different kinds of loves. And in particular, one called storge love, which is affectionate love, one called eros love, which is romantic love. How do these types of love evolve when that transition from dating to marriage happens?
Yeah. That's I still like that. I mean, that I still like C.S. Lewis's. It's some of his stuff is really, really timeless. There's a few things in some of what he talks about there in the Four Loves that seems a little bit dated, but the core of it is still really, really, I think, timeless and very helpful along the lines of this stuff. And to me, it's something that we the general population and pop psychology and all of this, I mean, we talk a lot about love,
yeah,
but I don't think we spend much time defining what we mean when we talk about love.
Yeah.
And I think it is such a important part of the transitional age adult of moving through the phases of, that family, familiar love, you're connecting with family, you've got all of that. You're beginning to branch out into friendships and how that starts to become more important. Brotherly love, philia, you're beginning to branch out into that. And then, that romantic love begins to develop and and then, agape, that unconditional love. So that the progression there, I think, can be thought of as a part of this growth
Mhm.
process. The developmental theorists, I mean, I still, think that, you look at some of those and some of the older developmental theorists, Erickson and stuff, I think still has a good idea of it. I mean, they talk about that the transition this transitional age that we're discussing is a transitional challenge of intimacy versus isolation, and so you're trying to really figure out, while you're separating from your family as a part of the growing up process, you're trying to figure out how to be in an intimate relationship with another person. And that means figuring out what love is and all the different aspects of love.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned agape as sort of that highest form of love.
Yeah.
How can couples cultivate that form of love?
Yeah. I think to cultivate that form of love, Lewis, I think he does do a good job of talking about that, romantic love gets us close in many ways. In healthy romantic love, it gets us close because it draws us into face-to-face intimacy. It draws us into a kind of intimacy and love that is self-giving. I'm willing to sacrifice and give for the other in a healthy kind of romantic love. But the draw of agape is to go beyond that. Even, it's not just a love that calls us to sacrifice for the beloved, the one that we love, but it's a love that calls us to sacrifice for the enemy, for our enemy, and learning what that really looks like. And, which is a whole topic in and of itself in some ways. But I think romantic love and those early stages of intimacy do draw us into what does it mean to have a sacrificial and self-giving love.
Shouldn't that filial love be continued to be cultivated in the process of this? I think, just thinking about early marriage and in JC's setting here, that deep friendship, I think, would be the one that might be lost early if you're not careful.
Yeah. I'll talk about some things and then you can jump in, JC, if you have some comments about that. But Lewis, I like the way Lewis depicts the difference. What Lewis talks about is philia, friendship, is side by side and outward facing. We're standing shoulder to shoulder, and we're standing shoulder to shoulder and looking towards our interests, our passions, I have friends that I have a deep friendship with that I may not talk to. I could go months without talking to them, and we pick up right back where we were talking about, because we're talking about stuff that's meaningful to both of us, key things. It may be deep things like theology and spirituality, or it may be things like cycling, bike riding, but we're standing side by side and connecting with these things out here, whereas romantic love is face to face. But you need both, and there is a risk of one trying to take the place of the other, and ultimately that's not healthy. You need friends, and you need to maintain good, healthy friendships, and you need to maintain good, healthy, romantic relationships. I don't know if you're in that process.
Yeah, with it's easier for us because I'm at most of the time school each day, so I have those friendships that I have there and with all of them, and it is we have talked about that a lot, trying to find time to be with, not shutting out everyone else and just the two of us. We know that it is healthy to have other friendships involved as well, and being able to be at school each day with all my friends, not with Will, that helps me with those friendships. And we went out with some friends the other night just for dinner, just so we can stay having those friendships as well as our marriage. So
Yeah, that side by side. I like that analogy, side by side, facing the world,
Yes. Yeah.
but also not neglecting the face to face.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like that's very easy to understand what you're saying there. And they do, I can see they each do have an opportunity to overtake one another. So you got to fight for both.
Yeah.
It's
And
almost like you need to be gauging at all times where
and
you're
you're,
at on all of those things, and then
and
push.
you're fighting for both in that you're maintaining the marriage and you're maintaining other friendships, but you're fighting for both in the relationship. Paula and I have a eros, a romantic love that is very face to face, and we have a philia where we're standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm. We work together every day. We interact. We are facing the world. So philia in that sense is sort of like, brothers in arms in the trenches, and we're shoulder to shoulder facing the world. And we have both, and both are important, and both are different. And we try to be intentional about fostering and growing both.
The number one cause of divorce in America is actually financial problems.
Yeah.
And the lack of really financial planning, probably. What have you seen in your practice? What have you seen with young couples? How important is this to get figured out?
Incredibly important. I mean, again, it's a topic that I talk about constantly, it seems like. And as I tell people all the time, I said, look, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial advisor. But I talk with people about finances all the time because it is such a source of tension and conflict, and because it's such a cultural absurdity. I for lack of a better phrase, I guess it's one of the other cultural absurdities that I feel bad for young couples because of the pressures that it puts on them. Like I said, it's not that I'm judging the individual or the young couple. I feel empathetic to their situation. There's the cultural absurdity of the one night stand, the cultural absurdity of the, we went on 2 dates and we're, in this exclusive relationship. And then there's this cultural absurdity of money and finances and debt, and how all of that is supposedly, that's just normal. Or I need to buy this car and borrow so that I can get my credit scores up. Like, what? I mean, people think that's a real thing. And I mean, I do understand it. I'm not, it's beyond the scope of our conversation, I guess, here to talk about. I do understand sort of the rationale of it, but it's an absurdity. It doesn't really, it's not the way things really work. You need to learn how to manage finances. You need to, sometimes debt may be necessary, but you have to, you don't have to have it to increase your credit scores or to somehow make your financial life better. It's far better to learn how to manage and stay out of debt than it is to, go into debt. And so, that's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, the weight of debt is heavy, and oftentimes opposites attract. And so there's typically one person that is not a great money manager and another one that is, and that can create a lot of conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to reveal anything there if you don't want, JC. But yes, that is a common. I'll reveal. I'm further along in the marriage game here, but yeah. Oh yeah, I'm definitely the Dave Ramsey gazelle, I think is what he calls it. I'm the one that's much more likely to, be a spender, and Paula is the much more fiscally conservative, and so she really has to, balance me and rein me in, and that's really helpful for young couples to start thinking about and learning early on It's also a good example of this whole submission and sacrifice thing, like, you know, from a biblical standpoint, you know, that I think sometimes gets really, you know, misinterpreted, or has. I'm hoping it's better than it used to be. That we went through a period of time where it was maybe pretty badly, you know, misused, you know, in terms of like the husband, the head of the house and all that, because it's like, well, yeah, wives submit to your husbands die for your wife. I mean, it's like, you know, you're not winning a crown that you get to, like, be, you know, hostile towards your wife with. You're supposed to die. So it's mutual giving and sacrifice, and it's mutual understanding of strengths and weaknesses. Like, there are things that I am naturally better at and more gifted at than Paula. Mm-hmm. And when we have a conflict around some of those things, she understands that she needs to honestly and openly share her voice and opinion. But then when it comes down to a final decision, she may need to submit to my, you know, stepping out and making the decision. But the same is true for other things. You know, there are things, you know, and, you know, big picture things I'm pretty good at. Details of like the finances and all of that, I offer my opinion, and I sometimes may offer strong opinions, but when push comes to shove and a decision needs to be made, I need to be the one that's submitting, because she's way better at it than I am. Like, you know, just from a real, like, practical, real life, I'm going to probably screw it up. So I need to submit.
We've talked often about just some of the most common diagnosis that comes into the office. Yeah. How have those diagnoses impacted the pursuit of marriage?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, I don't know if this is what you're thinking about, but there's two things that immediately come to my mind about that. Is that, you know, I definitely see, and it's a lot of what I deal with for, you know, folks coming in. If you're in a relationship, in a marriage with somebody who's struggling with a significant primary mental health problem, depression, anxiety, those sort of things, you know, for the couple to learn about those illnesses and how they impact emotions, thoughts, and feelings, so that it, you know, they can begin to tease apart, well, these things are kind of normal, maybe really tough and strong emotions, but they're normal to where we're at in our relationship development. We need to deal with it. But then these things are part of a illness that we need to separate and look at as an illness. And, you know, I may be really depressed and anxious right now, and I may even be kind of irritable with you, but at some point when I step back and look at it, it really is the illness, not a relational conflict or something that we're dealing with. So that's part of it. Now, the other side of that is, I feel like we're like one of the big, you know, I know we just came through a big, you know, pandemic that, you know, we're still, you know, talk about, but I think a much, much bigger and much more chronic kind of epidemic, pandemic level kind of issue is relational trauma. I mean, we have, I mean, just everybody has been impacted by relational trauma. And because of that relational trauma, we struggle to figure out healthy intimacy. We come into a relationship with wounds and with voices in our head, not hallucinations, but, you know, some of the, you know, I mean, some of it goes back a long time. It's probably like I think it's a Woody Allen, you know, thing, where one of his movies where there's a couple in bed, and then the scene moves the camera backs up and her parents are laying in the bed beside her. His parents are laying and they're talking, and it's like you hear. That's what I mean by we have all these voices in our head. We have all these, relational traumas, relational disruption. I mean, the normal stuff that we were just talking about, but then there's that next layer of like when there have been real disruptions and relational traumas, it makes dating, marriage, intimacy, family relationships a challenge. Not impossible. I see people, it's a lot of what I do is help people in that journey to heal and to stop the disruptions from continuing on to the next generation. It's like learning how to, okay, wait a minute. I don't want these things to go beyond me into the next generation. I want to put the brakes on that. And that's a lot of what we deal with here at the office.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Really good perspective. People are also an amalgamation of all their experiences. And so not just diagnosis, but all the things they've gone through and bringing that into that space too.
Yes.
And just being cognizant of it. Well, I think it's been a great conversation. Are there any final points that you want to add that maybe we didn't hit on?
Do you have any thoughts, JC?
I don't think I do.
Okay, good. No, I think we covered a lot of good stuff. I mean, I guess the thing I would emphasize is in some ways the whole thing, but right there at the end, like the stuff for the folks out there watching this that have stuck with us through the whole thing and are starting to, some of this is really beginning to resonate. I would definitely encourage you to, whether you come here to see us or somebody else or whatever, seek out some help and guidance because of this transition, especially in the context of the relational disruptions and traumas that so many of us have dealt with. This is really important. I mean, I can't hardly emphasize it enough. Like, this is where you put down, a stake in the ground and say, no more. This isn't going beyond me. This isn't going to affect my kids. No, I'm not. We're doing it differently and learning how to do that and doing the hard work of learning how to do that.
Yeah, well, that's really good. And if you're watching today and you feel like you need to come in or make an appointment, you can always call 573-334-7055. Thank you so much for being on another episode with us of The Compass, and we'll be back again very soon.